go onto University of Florida's website and go to their database, type weather modification, you'll find books that are 600 pages long telling you about the history of weather modification study just in the state of Florida. And people think like, hey, this could never happen. Well, what are you, blind? Just look up. It's happening.
What brought you out here today?
Actually, to meet my friend who's an activist about the chemtrails and geoengineering, which I've been noticing for several years now, along with everybody else. I hadn't wanted to take a part in it because I'm involved in a lot of other things, and but I think people are more ready now than ever. You know, it's just they've gone more and more with these chemtrails in the sky. You're seeing them more and more, not less and less, and everybody's noticing them. In Tampa, we've had it sprayed so heavily at times that that when there was a little bit of rain, it came down like a film on our cars. It would smear all the windshields. You had to use the windshield washer fluid in order to get past it. And that's very unusual. I had never seen it sprayed that heavily. It seems as though they're using different types of formulas at times. It also seems like there's a big coincidence that a lot of people are getting respiratory problems lately. Hearing about that from a lot of areas.
We're here for Earth Day event. Basically, we're here to spread information about geoengineering, solar radiation management, aerosol forcing. Basically, we're just here to, since Earth Day brings out people that are environmentally conscious, they're open to this information, whereas in other places people are typically just shut down when you try to present them with the information. So that's why we thought we would come here.
When did you first discover chemtrails, and how did you discover them? Actually,
I first discovered them, I first discovered them back in the 1990s. I used to dig clams out in the Indian River, or close to Cape Canaveral. And I mean, I'd watch rockets go up and things like that. But suddenly I began to see jet trails in the sky that were staying, not dissipating, and then actually growing and turning into clouds, and a few of them together would actually form in the right time of the day and temperatures. They'd actually form storm clouds, and I was amazed, and that was unusual because I worked out on the water for 20 years, so all I had to look at was water and sky. So I always saw sky, and I had never seen that before. I'd say it was about 1995 when I first started noticing that. Right. It wasn't like the trails I had seen growing up as a kid, that you see a trail behind an airplane or a jet and then it dissipates and falls apart. These were staying and actually growing and turning into real clouds. I was like amazed.
It's obvious when you look up in the sky, you know. It's not condensation, it's common sense. It's not, you know it's not condensation. You see it spreading out all over the sky, starting to feel sick, get headaches. It affects different people in different ways. But, I mean, that's how I got into it.
Several years ago, I watched the documentary, What in the World Are They Spraying? And I thought, wow, that looks really horrible. And I thought, it's only happening over there on the west, because most of it was filmed there. And then one day I walked outside and I saw it in my own sky in Florida. And ever since then, I've seen it since, and I've begun documenting pictures every day of the worst days of spray, and whenever they're spraying, I take pictures. So I've just been paying attention ever since. And once I did see it in my own sky, that also inspired me to look for more information and educate myself about it. And so now I found tons of documentaries and hundreds of patents and NASA information and CERN guys coming out with, you know, talking about this aerosol forcing, and it just needs to be stopped, and that's why we're here, because people are marching against Monsanto and GMOs, and if they don't stop spraying, the only thing that's going to grow is GMO. This is destroying the soil, it's destroying the water, and it's destroying the air. And I think it's the biggest assault on the planet at this time, and people need to be aware of it.
Conducted a weather experiment in the state of Florida for 6 years. They didn't publish the results until 1982. Not a single news outlet ever reported on the subject, and I've studied it. They did 2 phases. The first phase was 1970 and 1971, and then the second phase, it was all of South Florida. All of South Florida until 1976, then the next phase from 1976 to 1978 or 79. There's all books being published all during this period by University of Florida. You can go onto University of Florida's website and go to their database, type weather modification. You'll find books that are 600 pages long telling you about the history of weather modification study just in the state of Florida. And people think like, hey, this could never happen. Well, what are you, blind? Just look up. It's happening. Chemtrails isn't really a word that I like to use, mostly because it already has negative connotations attached to it. I started the study of weather modification and weather modification technology and geoengineering going back to probably 2007 and 2008. And then my study has taken off since probably 2010, and in the past couple of years I have pretty much made myself into what the equivalent of a meteorologist. I could talk about cloud microphysics, I could talk about all different types of cloud systems. I could tell you the chemistry of what happens when it rains, and so on and so forth. I basically studied it like I was in college for the past 2 or 3 years, sort of as a hobby. And I work now as a biologist in a lab and have worked as a biologist for the past 8 years.
What's some of the strongest evidence through your research that you've come across that shows that they're modifying the weather, that they're doing experiments like this?
Well, you can pretty much look up any time of the day and you can see the aerosols being injected into the atmosphere. You can go onto vapor maps, you could see time lapses, you can slow them down, you can see how how this spray is evolving into cirrus clouds, and then you can see how cloud systems are pretty much being created out of thin air. You could look on NASA Worldview, which is a cloud imagery program, to see still imagery of these things. You can compare it from the ground and look up and zoom into specific coordinates if you want to. That's pretty much it. And then it's just been years and years and years, and then I'm fortunate enough to spend a lot of time outdoors, and I spend a lot of time driving back and forth across the state. I think that we're in an interesting place, mostly because you have wind currents and wind shear coming off of the Gulf of Mexico. You have this wind stream that comes through the Gulf of Mexico, and then as it hits land, you have a lot of atmospheric moisture that you can kind of, manipulate, I guess. So we're in the Florida, and then the California, the Baja, and the entire Pacific Northwest are all pretty much serious candidates for the full brunt of this weather modification program that's coming at us right now.
What would you say to the skeptics? Like, if someone were to come up and say, "Oh, those are just contrails. That's not a chemtrail."
They'd say that, and as a person growing up, I always paid attention to the sky. I never saw checkerboards in the sky. I used to draw pictures. I never drew a checkerboard sky. I drew white fluffy clouds. And and if you look in the science, real contrails, it's supposed to be water vapor that dissipates within 60 seconds. They don't spread across the sky and eventually cover the whole entire sky with these aerosols. That's not water vapor, and I can't my eyes can see that. I don't need any scientist to try to convince me otherwise. I believe my own eyes, and that's not it's not water vapor.
And with the obvious trails in the skies, and we've got declassified Army documents of these experiments being carried out in the 60s and 70s over 4 neighborhoods in St. Louis. There's tons of patents now. With all of this information, readily available, why don't people see? How come people are still unaware of this?
I think people are afraid, and if new people go in to look up this information, the first information that they're going to find is all conspiracy theories, and they basically try to debunk or diffuse you from looking further into this. They feed your fear by, oh, it's just water vapor and it's just natural, and they have a natural a programmed response that everybody actually tells me personally, well, it's just water vapor, Rachel, I looked it up and it's a conspiracy and you don't need to worry. And I'm like, well, if you go look at NASA's site, you can find more information, or go to a CERN site, or the information is out there, and like you said, the declassified military documents. And people, I think it's just fear that keeps people from looking. I think they're afraid, and there's a term they use, cognitive dissonance, and you don't want to, it's so scary you don't want to believe it, so you shut down because that doesn't fit into your comfort zone. And I think that is what needs to stop. People, this is a scary thing, and people should be scared. We're being poisoned. But if we ignore it, it's not going away. And we can't just sit there and pretend that this isn't happening and just be happy with their textbook, oh, well, this is what it is, and not ever ask another question and just be happy with that answer, because that answer doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't even agree with the science. It doesn't, I can watch an airplane fly across the sky and turn its spray on and off. Well, an airplane cannot turn their engine on and off without losing altitude. That's not even possible. So if you're telling me this is a normal contrail, how did he turn his engine on and off without losing altitude? It's not possible. These are obviously spraying something into the atmosphere that they have the power to turn on and off from their cockpit, or I've read that it's been remotely powered also, where the spray is dispersed. So
people are very well conditioned by TV, by the media. Mainstream media is a total and complete lie. They're distracted by football and Facebook, and I mean, I use Facebook, but I use my Facebook to get this out there every day.
Right.
They're just distracted, and as long as there's events like this going on and Walmart's open and the world seems to be moving still, they think everything's okay.
Right.
And it's not.
People are noticing it for sure, more and more. But people a lot of times don't want to pay much attention to something like this because they're so busy paying attention to so much else. There's so much distractions, and there's so many different important issues, and a lot of the important issues are right here on the ground. So it's hard to start looking up at the sky, and you don't want anybody to think you're a tinfoil hat, as they call them.
Right. Who's behind this? I mean, these aren't just regular pilots flying these planes. Obviously, I would assume that they don't really know what they're doing. How is this kept under wraps? Where are they flying out of? Do you know any of the answers to those questions?
I don't want to talk about things that I don't necessarily know. I don't want to speculate about things because you could speculate all day long. But what you can conclude is that weather modification is happening. You can test the rainwater samples. You could see that the EPA isn't doing its job. You could visibly look up at the sky and you could see a massive amounts of pollution from aircraft. Even if you deny the fact that it's happening, water is a greenhouse gas. When a sky is filled with water vapor and artificial cloud cover from the airplane emissions, it's heating the earth. There's all kinds of stuff that are happening sort of as a side effect of, weather modification and what have you.
On the other side of things, it seems that people are becoming more aware of this, and it almost seems like the system is kind of going into damage control. And I've been seeing reports of them coming out and saying they're going to sell this to us now to save us from global warming,
Yes.
or to It's almost like this has to be done or else. Have you been
right.
hearing about that? And do you think they're going to try to softly sell this to us to
I
cover
agree.
themselves?
That's exactly what I see happening. Yes, they're selling it as they're saving us from global warming, and yes, that's exactly what's happening.
What can we do? And is there more people, somewhere that people can go to learn more about this?
There's geoengineeringwatch.org, there's Chemtrails Planet, there's Global Skywatch, Climate Viewer. People can go and they should report to the law enforcement, they should report to the EPA that they're seeing this, they can take pictures and report to their representatives and let them know that we're not fooled and that we do know that this is being done and we're not going to be sold. I mean, right now they're trying to sell us a carbon tax, and that is all goes hand in hand with this, because I've also read that they have a system that they can do carbon capture and actually make fuel out of the carbon dioxide. So this chemical blanket that they end up creating traps this heat, traps the carbon dioxide, and makes it easier for them to do this. So there is like multiple purposes for this spray, and we just need to be aware, and we need to keep ourselves educated and informed and not buy the story that they're trying to sell us, because it's not in our best interest.
I mean, anyone can study any subject. You know, the beauty of being in the age of information is that ignorance is a choice these days. If you want to be a meteorologist, you can go study weather like it's your job, or like you were in college. You could even pull up college curriculums if you wanted to study weather to that degree. You know, same thing with any subject. So the only thing I guess that we could really truly do is just continue to raise awareness about what's happening, and you know, beyond that, I don't know. Humanity is at an interesting period in its evolution.
I mean, raise awareness, bring it to people's attention, learn about it, educate yourself as much as you can, and learn as much as you can about it. And geoengineeringwatch.org is a great site. They have all kinds of information, data. I've sent in a sample, rain sample, tested it for metals. You can get your blood tested. I haven't done that yet, but you can get your blood tested for different types of metals, the levels in your body. We've got to get this out there, because we're not going to have, I'm afraid we don't have a future here shortly for ourselves, let alone our children's future.